Ever have one of those nights when you just couldn't sleep? This was one of those nights. I just moved to a new apartment about a week ago. It was an improvement from the previous one, with a decent living room and a bigger bedroom. I was happy about the deal, but something about it felt uncomfortable, more so with each passing days. I laid on my bed, but just couldn't fall asleep. Some people put on ambience or music to help them go to sleep, but I like my bedtime quiet and dark. So there I was, back flat on the bed, just waiting for sleep to finally take over. Then I noticed something. Half the ceiling looked much darker than the other. It was weird, but I was finally getting sleepy at this point. Oh well. Next day, another night of struggle for sleep. I laid on bed, eyes blinking at the ceiling, and realized that it looked normal tonight. No particular part darker than the other, just smooth gray in the dark. Tossing and turning, I kept my eyelids closed, trying hard to sleep. But you eventually open up again if you're wide awake. The room still looked dark. What I mean is, I couldn't see certain parts of the bedroom as if it were pitch black. Like when the lights are off all of a sudden and your eyes need time to adjust. The darkness of the room I should be comfortable with by now felt unfamiliar. Then I saw it. The dark area at the dresser moved. I thought I was just seeing things and tried to shake it off, but it was plain to see. The darkness was moving. It kept going, slowly creeping onto my bed and eventually beside my feet. It looked as if it was touching my feet. No, it definitely was. I felt goosebumps running all over me. I don't know why, but all I could think of doing at the time was hiding in my blanket, like a kid that just heard a ghost story. For how long? I don't know. It could have been 10, 15 minutes, maybe an hour. I stayed in the blanket, motionless, until I was calm enough to look around the room again. The room was completely dark. The only thing I could tell apart from the rest of the bedroom was the window, thanks to the moonlight shining through. It all felt unreal, as if I was in the middle of a dream. It's been about a month since I saw it last. Nothing strange has happened in my apartment again, but I can't shake the feeling of paranoia that the darkness I saw that night might someday grab a hold of me and drag me somewhere. This was a long time ago, back when I was a little kid. Dad came home from work with a nice looking toolbox in his hand. He said he found it along the way, a wooden toolbox with nice little decorative patterns carved onto it. Dad was never a fan of reusing stuff that used to belong to someone else, but I guess the toolbox looked too good to just let it sit on the side of the street. It was way better than the old rusty toolbox back home. My brother and I loved the way it looked, and the smooth wooden texture was a nice change from the cold, flaky feeling of the rusty metal. We spent a good deal of time looking at it and putting Dad's tools in it. The next day, my brother came down with the fever. They treated him for the fever at the hospital and sent him back with some cold medications the same day. The fever came back the day after, the medications being no use, no help whatsoever. So it was back to the hospital for the same treatment and the same medications again. The third day, Mom went to grab the toolbox Dad had brought home before. Mom wasn't a superstitious person, but that day it occurred to her that my brother's fever began the same night Dad brought home the toolbox. She wanted to try something. Mom and Dad went to the backyard, put some lighter fluid on the toolbox, and threw a match on it. I was there too with my dog, Goldie, watching the whole thing. I remember very clearly everything that happened next. The box caught on fire, as expected from any dried wood. If you ever saw bonfires or even the fire in the barbecue grill, you'd know it usually burns with bright orange, flickering in the air. The fire that burned on the toolbox was nothing like what I've seen before or ever since. It burned in bright blue, soaring almost as high as the house roof in a sharp pointy shape like an ice pick, holding still even with the wind. I thought I heard some kind of a howl in the air. Goldie, a friendly dog that never made loud noise in front of my family, was barking at the fire non-stop from behind me as if scared of something. My brother's fever came down the same day of the strange occurrence, never to return. After that day, I made a habit of never picking up anything abandoned or left out for others to use, no matter how good they look. You just never know what else might come along with it. Last Thanksgiving wasn't the happy family gathering it usually is. It was also Grandma's funeral. She was missing for a few days and was found dead. No one told me what exactly happened, just that her dementia acted up and she went missing, ending up on the street. The night of the funeral, we all went to bed early. My family and I stayed at Grandma's house to take care of some remaining business. Everyone was exhausted, the whole ordeal being rushed and all due to the circumstances. I woke up in the middle of the night to a noise coming from the living room. It sounded like someone was rummaging through one of the drawers. I went to the living room to see what was going on. There, in the dark, I saw Grandma. She was rummaging through the drawers all over the living room as if she was looking for something. I was always a little afraid of her being a particularly strict grandma when I was growing up. I just stood there, shocked at what was happening in front of me. I was seeing a dead person. Then she saw me and stared at me with cold eyes. She then quickly approached me like she used to when I got in trouble with her as a child. "What are you doing sleeping here?" I don't know what happened after that. Mom saw me sleeping in the living room and woke me up in the morning. I must have passed out when I saw Grandma approaching me. No one lives in that house anymore, with Grandma and Grandpa both gone. Dad will probably sell it. Will she be rummaging through the living room again, trying to find whatever she was looking for? I still try not to go into a living room alone, no matter which house. Always afraid that Grandma might be there. This happened about 6 years ago. The first apartment I ever moved into was one of those studio apartments with the kitchen, living room, and bedroom all in one place. There were 2 desks on one side, one for work and one for other things. I also had a keyboard piano set up on another side adjacent to the desks. This was the one instrument I can play. Obviously, each of them had a chair for me to sit on. On the remaining wall was my bed. There was no fourth wall, technically speaking, because it opened up to the kitchen and then the apartment door. I woke up in the middle of sleep one night. It wasn't because I needed to go to the bathroom or because something woke me up. I just did. I love to sleep, and waking up in the middle of the night without the help of an alarm is unthinkable. As unusual as it was, I needed to go back to sleep for work in the morning. I sat up and turned to the side, thinking I should grab a glass of milk or something, and then stopped. The 3 chairs that are supposed to be under the desks and the keyboard were all sitting side by side right next to the bed, the front side facing me. I have no words to describe the feeling of terror I felt that night. I was in a hiking club back in college days. I was really into it, going to different trails every weekend with friends, and more often than not, alone. The club members met up every couple of weeks to go hiking together and sometimes even camping, since many of the parks that had good trails also had nice campgrounds. It was a camping day. We set up our tent, prepped the site, and went on hiking on the trail nearby. It was nice, cool breeze and fresh air with amazing trees around. But about 30 minutes into the trail, fog began setting in. It was barely noticeable at first, but it kept getting denser to the point where we decided it was too much. We had no choice but to turn around and get back to the campgrounds. It was still a good time. A roaring campfire, barbecue with drinks. I always enjoyed camping out with good friends, and this was one of those times. Night set in, and it was still foggy. We called it a night and went inside the tent to get some sleep. And then, our tent suddenly started moving, as if someone outside was shaking the whole thing along with the sound of some kids laughing. At first I thought it has to be some kids from the other tents or on the camp messing around. But none of us remembered seeing any kids during the day. It was off season and not too many people were camping out here. All we saw was a couple of older folks at a site about 100 feet away, and another one with the lone hiker. As far as we knew, there were no kids here. Well, the tent was shaking to the point where we were afraid of it collapsing on us. Someone had to go outside and check. After a round of rock, paper, scissors, that someone was decided. Me. Flashlight on one hand and a hiking pole on the other, I went outside, preparing myself for the worst. And then, nothing. The tent stopped shaking as soon as I stepped outside. I looked around, pointing my flashlight in all directions, but there wasn't anything nearby. Not even a squirrel. We were all very spooked, but it was way too late at night. No one wanted to pack up and leave. So, we ended up finishing the rest of our drinks and went to sleep.